We've also have a battle of the ages. There is certainly going to be more pressure on a 35-year-old 10 years from now on them to fulfill and help serve the country by taxes than it was for me. Because as this debt keeps increasing, the working person is going to be called on more and more to somehow pay for it. And there's going to come a point when that younger person is going to look at and go, wait a minute, a lot of this expenses is going to something like Medicare for an 85 or 90-year-old person to have a lung transplant. And I'm 35 and I can barely make ends meet. This is a coming battle. It may not impact the markets today or be discussed today, but in your generation, it's going to come to the forefront. And we're even seeing it in your country, Canada, where Canada has implemented and encouraged certain seniors who are both either financially or ill, quite bad, to consider, taking their lives. And it's a Canadians are shocked when they hear it, and then when they finally Google and search it, they see that it's actually happening. And some of them are very upset about that. Others consider it just part of a new culture and the way life is becoming, and that's how societies move. And it's difficult for those who believe against something like that to see that keep moving in that direction.
So you've talked about the retirement crisis before. Are you saying that, and please correct me if I'm not getting this right, but are you saying that as the population in the U.S. and perhaps some other Western countries get older, the younger generation will likely have to face higher taxes down the line in order to finance more Social Security, more Medicare, more retirement homes?
And just the cost of keep increasing debt. Look in Japan, it's estimated that within 20 years, there'll only be one working person for every person retired. That's unsustainable. We went from 20 people working to support one person on Social Security now to less than two people working. And so that's just one of the demographic arguments that are going to happen here. There's also going to be an issue with people's ability to retirement for just retired. When you have almost 2/3 of the working force working paycheck to paycheck, they're in no position to save well enough to meet what would be needed in retirement. So that in itself is going to be an issue. And then there's other issues with that, affordable housing, supporting that, a great amount of immigration, whether you want to call it legal or whatever the terminology some side may be using. All these things just add up to more and more expenses. And with less people ability to pay it is going to make things really challenging. And eventually, governments, remember, all they can ever do is they don't create a business that they make a lot of money on. They create taxes and other fees to try to sustain and pay for things that, they vote into, power. And that's becoming more and more difficult for them. And some of them started to realize it. For the first time, David, I never thought in my lifetime we would hear politicians openly speaking about you need to do something about Social Security and cut it. And then when the so-called hit the fan, they all backed off, but they opened the door to that. And that's going to be a necessary evil to focus on. And it's not just an issue restricted just to the United States. It's an issue many parts of the Western world is facing because of an aging population and less younger people working. It's one of the secrets, I think, behind governments believing immigration will help because it'll bring more workers in, but it's not something that they're openly going to declare that's the reason for.
Which financial sectors, if any at all, will likely benefit, or corporate sectors will perhaps benefit financially from an aging population? I'm not talking about the obvious, like retirement home builders, but
Well, believe it or not, that's one of it. Listen, the days of building 5,000 and 6,000 and 7,000 square foot homes is over. Even if younger people can afford to buy a home, it's not going to be one of those big ones. So we're seeing changes in way people's communities are built. We're seeing far more smaller homes being built, even not just on the retirement age. Then, of course, there's the medical. There's also, people might get older, but I live in the community, but they still want entertainment and they want to have joy. And so the service industry and certain types of service industries are going to benefit from that and all. And the taking care of. Listen, one of the big things that changed, David, is in previous generations, two or three generations lived all in the same household. Either your great uncle, your grandparents were there when you were a young kid, and so forth. There wasn't assisted living and all these other places, but part of the fact that we were able to extend life and make the into the 70s and 80s and 90s, some diseases that weren't paramount because people weren't living that long are now impacting people and the cost to take care of that. Dementia and all the other areas now, and the cost to, if you're not able to take care of them and place them in a facility, is prohibitive for 8 or 9 out of 10 of Americans. And it's probably the same around the world as well. And that's also another thing that's going to become a more and more issue. And what public will always do will turn to the government and say, hey, you got to help us with that. At a time when the government is here in at least the United States is very strapped. It really is. It's technically bankrupt, because if we ever carried our liabilities on our books, we would be considered bankrupt. I know you've spoken recently about bankruptcies in businesses, how they're increasing. So things are things are not very bright if you look past the next 6 to 12 months. There's so many paramount issues that have not yet been addressed, and they're growing worse as each day goes by. Whether or not we talk about it is inconsequential.
What's another issue we haven't discussed yet? We talked about the aging population, geopolitics with China. What's another issue we have to be aware of?
Well, housing. We
Okay.
have a huge problem with affordable housing now, and if you think about this, uh, New Jersey, where I am, has some wealthy towns, and those people want to have people come and cut their lawns and clean their houses and do other what we call menial work, but they certainly can't live in those towns. So, but they need to live at least close enough to make the commute workable, and they need affordable housing. And one of the things here in New Jersey and some other states is affordable housing, even for people for renting, has become just astronomical. It's become unaffordable. And so that is going to be a big issue. And then the issue that a lot of people aren't talking about, only because my wife and I are involved in it, is more and more people are falling on the needs of food banks. It's an amazing phenomenon. If you talk to really any food bank anywhere in the United States, they will share about how many more people are coming and the level of people from income that need now to come to them just to sustain life. In fact, one of the big unknowns that a lot of people aren't talking about is how many people now are using credit cards just to pay for day-to-day life needs. Something that in our generation we never thought of. I mean, my parents never even had a credit card.